The Bible record gives us a couple of examples of what a blessing might be. For instance, it might be when Isaac gave a blessing specifically to Jacob, and we recall the Bible story telling us the record of the blessing was his future and telling him what his future might look like and telling him how God might have specifically been able to use him in his life work, sort of assigning a purpose, if you will. A baby dedication is saying that we're going to set you aside for all of your life as being dedicated to God's service and to the ministry that God requires you to do, so that you'll become a worshiper and a servant.
Why do we do baby blessings?
Well, again, back to the biblical record, we recognize, of course, Hannah brought Samuel into the temple, and when she brought him into the temple, it was because she understood that blessing this child would set him aside, as we said earlier, for service, a life of service. And of course, we look further into the record and we find that in the New Testament, Jesus himself was taken to the temple and blessed, as was the tradition. He and his mother and his father took him into the temple to be blessed.
What are some of the components to a baby blessing?
A baby blessing can include a number of components, and they can be as creative and diverse as possible. There's lots of resources and ideas that each person can bring to the table to make them unique and specialized, as a wedding service is specialized and unique. But likewise, for this particular setting, you would generally invite the families to come forward of the child, those who love and particularly nurtured spiritually this child, grandparents, aunties and uncles, to come forward. And the pastor might then present the child's name and the family's names to the congregation so they know who's being blessed. Then after that, the pastor makes usually some remarks, such as a homily or some kind of a charge that tells the family a little bit about the spiritual journey that they're endeavoring to take, and perhaps gives them some words of counsel and encouragement about how to parent and what has gone on in the past and what might go on in the future. Then generally what happens is that there is an opportunity for the pastor then to ask the parents and invite them to accept the charge that's been placed before them. And the pastor's request would then be asked to be responded to. Likewise, another request would be to ask those who are family and friends who are standing with this family if they indeed accept the same charge or a differing charge to be the support team for this family. And of course, generally, the congregation is invited also to become partners with this relationship, that they would become available to the congregation and available to each other, and specifically available to this child, to guide and direct and to nurture this child in love and in kindness and in truth. Finally, the baby would be taken by the pastor, if the baby's not too fussy, and held, and a prayer blessing would be read or spoken over the child, a blessing for the child's future and a dedication for the child's life.
What are the spiritual responsibilities of a pastor in giving a baby blessing?
Excellent question. And the first, of course, is to be sure that the parents understand that this is not just some kind of a service, some kind of a ceremony. It's a commitment to a way of life. So as a Seventh-day Adventist pastor, I'm blessing a child with the understanding, and hopefully with the parents' commitment, that they'll be rearing this child according to the teachings of the Bible that we hold dear. So that's the first spiritual responsibility. The second spiritual responsibility, of course, is to be sure that the family, the pastor has some acquaintance with the family, understands their background, has some feel for who they are before he blesses the baby. Again, so it's not just an exercise in ceremony, but an actual commitment on the part of the parents and the child and the larger family to support this way of life.
What are the importance of having a baby blessing or a baby dedication?
Well, when a child is brought into the world, a child has always been, from its conception, a plan of God. And with God's plan, He designed all people to glorify His name and to be worshipers for Him and to be servants for Him. And so as early as a child is birthed into the world, we want to make sure that that child understands the significance of his life, that it isn't just for him, that it is indeed for God. So we dedicate or bless children to set them aside for God, for service, and again, for worship.